A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. Now, to ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Also, be sure to subscribe to Argyle on YouTube for exclusive access to all past events. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Kate Bowden, Director of Enterprise Solutions, Tax Technology with Avalara. We're excited to have Kate with us for a thought leadership presentation titled AI Isn't the Risk, Lack of Control Is, How Finance Leaders Scale Automation with Confidence. Kate, thank you so much for being here today with us. Welcome, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, I think I'll just point out here the safe harbor statement. And we will jump right in. So what I'd like to do is start with something that really might feel slightly counterintuitive. And that is that most finance leaders are not actually worried about AI itself. What they're worried about is what happens when decisions start occurring in ways they can't fully see or fully explain. And that is a very different concern. Because AI is no longer something that happens on the edge of the business, it's becoming embedded directly into finance operations. It's influencing classification, tax determination, invoice processing, reconciliation, reporting, and operational workflows. This is happening in real time. Now, I think the industry conversion around AI sometimes misses something important. The question is no longer, should we use AI? That question has largely already been answered. Organizations are already using AI. Finance teams are already operating with AI embedded into workflows. So the real question now is, how do we scale with it confidently? Because finance teams are managing a level of complexity today that manual models simply cannot sustain efficiently anymore. You have more transactions, more systems, more jurisdictions, more reporting obligations, more regulatory change, and all of that is happening simultaneously. So AI is what allows organizations to operate at that scale. This is really why this matters. AI helps finance organizations move faster, reduce your manual efforts, surface patterns, automate repetitive work, and increasingly make decisions in real time. And that's not optional anymore. So the alternative would be to try to scale complexity with more people, more spreadsheets, more review cycles, and more reconciliation. And that model eventually breaks. So the future of finance operations is clearly AI-driven, and the organizations that scale successfully over the next decade will absolutely rely on AI as part of how finance operates. And there's an important distinction. AI only creates confidence when the systems underneath it are built to support it. That's the shift. The question isn't, can AI do this? The question is, can we trust the system AI operates inside? Because once finance teams can trust the system, AI stops feeling experimental and it starts becoming transformational. You are probably aware that finance organizations are under enormous pressure right now. And it's not coming from one place, it's coming from every direction simultaneously. So organizations are operating across more channels, more entities, more jurisdictions, more products, and more digital systems than ever before. And at the same time, expectations from the business keep increasing, move faster, you need to close faster. You really have to operate in real time. And you need to provide more insight. Supporting growth without increasing operational overhead. And that combination creates an environment where traditional operating models simply struggle to keep pace. And this is exactly why AI is becoming so important, because AI allows organizations to process and interpret information at scale. Humans alone simply can't manage it effectively anymore. So AI is helping finance teams classify transactions instantly, surface anomalies earlier, automate repetitive operational work, accelerate interpretation, and improve responsiveness across workflows. And importantly, it helps organizations do that continuously, not periodically, not after the fact, continuously. And that's a major operational shift because compliance and finance are increasingly moving from periodic processes to continuous execution models. And that's where the industry is heading. So this conversation is not really about whether AI is useful. That part is already happening. The question is whether organizations have systems capable of allowing AI to operate consistently, safely, and at scale. That's where the real differentiation starts to emerge. So AI really isn't the problem. Fragment systems are. So when people talk about AI risk, what they're often reacting to is uncertainty. In most finance environments, the issue isn't the AI itself. The issue is fragmentation. So different systems, different logic, different workflows, different interpretation, and that creates drift. One system applies logic in one way, another system applies slightly different logic downstream, and a third process handles exceptions differently again. At small scale, organizations often manage around that manually. But at enterprise scale, those small inconsistencies compound very quickly. And that's where the operational friction starts to appear. So finance teams then spend time reconciling, reviewing, validating, investigating discrepancies, and rebuilding confidence in outputs. That's the hidden cost of fragmented environments. And importantly, AI did not create that problem. AI simply exposes it faster because AI accelerates execution, which means inconsistencies surface more quickly and at greater scale. That's why the answer is not slowing AI down. The answer is creating systems designed to keep AI-driven workflows aligned, governed, and explainable. So that's a real requirement for trusted AI operations. This is really the central idea in this entire conversation. So AI drives scale, and that's what it is exceptionally good at. It allows organizations to process more transactions, automate more workflows, and identify more patterns, operating much faster than manual environments ever could. But AI alone does not create confidence. That comes from the system underneath it. And this is where trusted infrastructure becomes incredibly important, because finance organizations do not simply need speed, they need the consistency, explainability, governance, and repeatability The same input should produce the same output every time. That's what deterministic systems provide. And once you combine the deterministic execution with the AI-driven orchestration, something very powerful starts to happen. AI handles the complexity around the life cycle. Things like classification, interpretation, anomaly detection, workflow acceleration, and operational guidance. Meanwhile, the underlying system ensures consistency, traceability, and governed execution. And that combination matters enormously because now finance teams can move faster without sacrificing trust in the outcome. That's the future state operating model emerging across finance organizations right now. That's the operating model. AI handling complexity, trusted systems enforcing consistency, and finance teams operating with much greater confidence at scale. Most finance control models were designed for a completely different operational environment, a slower one, a more centralized one. A world where transactions moved in sequence and teams had time to validate those outputs manually before any downstream impact occurred. And that model worked for a long time. But the operating environment has fundamentally changed. Now transactions are happening instantly. Systems operate continuously, and AI increasingly influences decisions in real time. And that changes everything. Because once AI becomes part of operational execution, review alone no longer scales. And that's not a bad thing. It actually is what allows finance organizations to evolve. Because that old model, relying on more manual validation as complexity grows, eventually becomes unsustainable. The organizations scaling successfully right now are not trying to slow down AI. They're redesigning control around the reality that AI is now part of how operations function. That's a really important distinction. The future of finance is not manual oversight layered onto AI. The future is AI operating continuously inside systems designed to govern execution at scale. And this is exactly why deterministic infrastructure matters so much, because AI increases operational capability dramatically. The system underneath it still needs to ensure consistency, explainability, and governed outcomes. This is where modern finance operations are heading. That transition is already happening faster than most organizations realize. One of the biggest shifts happening right now is the move from traditional automation to agentic AI. And this is where the conversation becomes much more interesting because traditional automation was fundamentally rules-driven. It executed predefined workflows. It completed tasks. Agentic AI changes that model completely. Now, AI can interpret context, coordinate actions, identify next steps, surface anomalies, and orchestrate workflows dynamically across systems. That's a fundamentally different operating model. And it's much closer to how enterprise operations are going to function over the next decade, because organizations are no longer operating inside isolated applications. They're operating across ecosystems. So across ERPs, procurement systems, e-commerce platforms, billing systems, marketplaces, partner networks, which means AI also has to operate across all of those ecosystems. And that's why the concept of agentic AI matters so much. This is not AI acting like a chatbot sitting off to the side. This is AI embedded directly into operational execution. And this is where Avalara is building very aggressively, not AI as a feature, AI as the operational layer across compliance workflows. So this includes AI-driven classifications, AI-guided onboarding, AI-powered validation, anomaly detection, workflow orchestration, and real-time operational guidance through ABI. And importantly, all of that operates inside a deterministic compliance system designed to maintain consistent outcomes, governed execution, and audit defensible decisions. That's what makes this different from generic AI. That's why I think the market is shifting towards platforms rather than isolated AI tools. Organizations increasingly need orchestration, governance, and connected execution, not just automation in isolated pockets. That's really what agentic AI represents, AI becoming part of how operations themselves function. So this is how Avalara approaches the future of AI-driven compliance. Because what Avalara is building is not AI layered onto those fragmented systems. It's a compliance platform architected specifically for AI-driven execution at scale. At the center is a deterministic compliance foundation. And that's incredibly important because in tax and compliance, organizations need outcomes that are consistent, repeatable, traceable, and defensible every time. That deterministic foundation is what allows AI to scale safely around it. And this is really the architectural advantage that Avalara has, because around that deterministic core, agentic AI operates continuously across the lifecycle, not in one place, across the entire workflow. That includes the onboarding, the classification, the mapping, the anomaly detection, the workflow execution, reporting, and operational guidance. And importantly, all of it operates inside a single system of record. So you have centralized logic, consistent execution, connected workflows, and end-to-end visibility. This is what modern AI infrastructure actually looks like, not isolated AI systems, not disconnected automation, but AI embedded into systems designed specifically for governed execution at enterprise scale. This is why Avalara talks about being an agentic AI platform for global tax and compliance. Because the goal is not just helping organizations answer questions faster. The goal is helping organizations execute compliance continuously and confidently across the business ecosystem. That's the future state model, and it's where the industry is clearly heading. So here's where our conversation moves beyond automation into how AI fundamentally changes the operating model of finance and compliance. So your compliance lived inside isolated systems historically. So you had your tax systems, your ERP, your e-commerce systems, reporting systems, and each operated somewhat independently. And so what's changing now is that AI is becoming a part of every decision surface across the business ecosystem. That means compliance intelligence is no longer confined to one workflow or one application. So it's operating across the ERPs, inside the e-commerce platforms. It works through APIs It works within partner applications, inside productivity tools, and eventually through fully agentic interfaces. This is a really important shift because finance teams no longer operate in one system. They are operating across that ecosystem. So AI needs to operate across that ecosystem. And that's what this idea of a multi-surface intelligence layer really means. So it's embedded wherever those transactions, workflows, and decisions happen. From an Avalara perspective, this is where our platform is going. Not AI as a separate destination, but AI integrated directly into the operational fabric of the business. That includes agent-to-agent workflows, APIs, and MCP infrastructure, embedded intelligence across ERPs and marketplaces, AI-driven orchestration across compliance workflows. This is why agentic AI matters so much, because agentic AI isn't just about generating answers. It's about coordinating actions across systems. That's a fundamentally different model, and it's much closer to where finance operations are headed over the next several years. The organizations that scale successfully won't be the ones using isolated AI tools. They'll be the ones operating AI across connected systems and workflows. And critically, they'll do it inside platforms designed to keep those outcomes consistent, governed, and trusted. That's really what this visual represents. Not just AI inside of finance, but AI becoming a part of the operational layer across the enterprise. This is a point where the conversation becomes much more practical. Up until now, we've talked about why AI matters, why finance needs it, and why trust becomes so important as automation scales. But the obvious question is, what does a trusted AI system actually look like? And here's where Avalara approaches the problem very differently, because what we're building is not AI added onto fragmented workflows or a chatbot layered into legacy systems. It's an agentic AI platform designed specifically for tax and compliance execution. At the top, you have AI agents operating across the lifecycle, not just answering questions, actually helping orchestrate the classification, the onboarding, the workflow execution, notifications, reporting, anomaly detection. And that's an important distinction. This isn't AI acting as a disconnected assistant. This is AI operating inside the system itself. Underneath that is what really matters, the compliance trust infrastructure. This is the deterministic layer, the part that ensures the consistent logic, the governed execution, and the audit defensible outcomes. Because in finance and compliance, AI alone is not enough. You need a system that guarantees consistency underneath that AI layer. And that's why you see things like centralized tax content, governance controls, audit trails, analytics, billing and usage controls, workflow orchestration, all operating together. This is really the shift that's happening in the industry right now. So organizations are really moving away from the isolated AI tools toward the AI operating models. That's what agentic AI actually means. AI operating across the workflows and systems to help execute outcomes at scale. And right in the middle of all of this is Avi. So Avi becomes the interaction layer between users and the platform. Instead of navigating complexity manually, users can ask questions, understand decisions, get guidance, surface issues in real time. And critically, all of this still operates inside a controlled system. That's the difference, not just AI. But AI operating inside infrastructure designed for trust, consistency, and execution. That's what allows finance teams to scale confidently with AI. So when you step back and look at where all of this is going, the direction becomes very clear. The future of finance operations is absolutely AI driven, not partially, not experimentally. Fundamentally, AI will increasingly operate across workflows, across systems, eventually across the entire business ecosystems. This has to happen because the complexity organizations are managing simply cannot scale manually anymore. What changes now is the role of the system underneath the AI. Organizations that succeed won't just be the ones using AI. They'll be the ones operating AI inside the systems designed for trust, consistency, explainability, and execution at scale. So that's a shift from AI as a tool to AI as the infrastructure. And that's exactly where Avalara is positioned, not as disconnected AI features, but as an agentic AI platform for global tax and compliance, a deterministic compliance foundation at the core, an AI, agentic AI operating across the life cycle, and a system of record built specifically for AI-driven compliance at scale. So AI is helping to classify and validate, coordinating the workflows, surfacing anomalies, embedded directly into the operational systems, supporting users in real time through AVI. But all operating inside infrastructure designed to maintain consistency, governing execution, creating audit defensible outcomes. That's really the takeaway I'd leave with you today. The future is not, should we use AI? The future is, what kind of system are we trusting AI to operate inside? Because once the system is trusted, AI stops feeling like uncertainty, and it starts becoming one of the biggest operational advantages a finance organization can have. Okay, Michael, are there any questions that we've received?
Yes, Kate, we do. And thank you so much for an insightful thought leadership. And now we can go to a couple of the questions that have come through. Okay, so our first question, from your conversations with finance organizations, are you seeing more concern today around the technology itself or around visibility into what the technology is actually doing behind the scenes?
So I think mostly it's the visibility, not knowing what the decisions, what the actions are coming out, not knowing what's behind it, I think is really what's adding the concerns. So that's more the approach. I think people are sort of more comfortable with AI being part of their day-to-day activities, but not really doing that driving in the agentic method. So that's, I mean, if you look at it, that's where your underlying system, what AI is looking at and working with, if you're confident in that underlying system, then you know that the AI is making appropriate decisions.
Excellent, thank you. And I believe we have time for one more question. So there's a lot of pressure right now to adopt AI quickly so companies don't fall behind. How do you advise finance leaders to move fast enough to stay competitive without creating operational and compliance risk?
So that's, I mean, that's where you look at, if you today have multiple different manual systems, maybe you're actually downloading data to a spreadsheet, reviewing it before you're moving on, balancing to the GL. If you have a lot of manual steps in that process, you want to start there. And, you know, really what you're looking at is you want to have an operational system like what Avalara does to maintain sort of those compliance rules you have the ability to go in and make sure that that is what you want. That's going to give you your consistency, and that's going to allow the agentic workflows to really kind of next level you up, bring you to an enterprise grade level of utilizing AI, allowing you to do that scaling.
That's great. Thank you, Kate. Well, that's
Okay.
all the time we have for this session. And I want to thank you again so much for being here. It's a wonderful thought leadership. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. Now, this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And our next session will begin at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be a keynote presentation titled Driving Growth with Limited Resources.